name of your precious Son, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. I call this meeting of the Vernon Consolidated Independent School District to order. Let the record show a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called and has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. From behalf of the board, welcome to our regular November meeting, I think it is. Glad to have you here. Thank you, sir. Past member of the Mr. Keith, anybody signed in for open forum?
No, sir.
Okay. With that,
I meant to though, Sharon. I just want to say one thing.
you sure can.
I appreciate the due diligence and the dedication y'all have towards the COVID, what's going on, and keeping our kids safe and the hard work y'all performed and keeping the school clean. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. No action on the canvas yet, right, Sharon?
No, sir.
Okay. We're going to skip item number 5 and number 6 is swearing the newly elected board. Can't do that.
We can't do
Can't
that
do
yet.
that. That's right. I'm sorry.
And then we're going to hold off on electing board officers
Okay.
because Trustee Foster can't be here this evening.
So that gets us down in the communication and report.
Absolutely. And our first communication and report is our Burnett High School Students of the Month. And I'm going to invite Mr. Burkhart, our principal at Burnett High School, to help us recognize 3 outstanding students from Burnett High School.
Thank you, Mr. McBurnett. Burnett High School is very excited to recognize 3 outstanding students of the month for this month. And Madison Rygard, if you would come join me at the podium, please. I have the pleasure and honor of recognizing our first student of the month tonight, and that is Madison Rygard. Madison Rygard is a hardworking, motivated, and dedicated young lady. Some of her accomplishments include she's a 4-year member of the Highlandettes. She was the sophomore lieutenant, junior co-captain, and senior captain of the Highlandettes currently. She is also a member of varsity choir, NHS, the Spirit, Pride, and Honor leadership crew, and she attends the Studio 29 Company Dancers, where she takes class every day and also teaches class. She also does all of this while maintaining a GPA that keeps her in the top 20% of her class. Tonight, I would also like to share with you who she is as an individual. Madison is a very passionate person. When she sets her mind to achieve something, she's committed 110%. She puts others before herself and makes it her goal to improve who they are as individuals. Her dance teacher, Mrs. Clinton, says, "I have known Madison since she was very young, and it has been a joy to watch her grow into such a beautiful, gifted, talented, and classy young woman. Having her as the captain for the 2nd year in a row is such a blessing and great accomplishment." After high school, Madison plans to also continue growing in dance and plans to work in the professional capacity as a dancer. Ladies and gentlemen, Burnett High School Student of the Month, Madison Rygard. Next, I would like to invite up Mr. Caleb Blakey and Grayson Barnett.
Good evening. It is my pleasure to recognize Grayson Barnett as the choir student of the month. Since I have known Grayson, he has always demonstrated the kind of character and leadership that I have hoped to instill in the rest of my choir students. Grayson is a constant in the choir program and in many other organizations around Burnett High School. Because of Grayson's consistent, steadfast, and calm leadership, I have seen his peers in choir succeed more and elevate their own learning to be better leaders within the choir program. Currently at Burnett High School, Grayson is involved in several organizations. These organizations are choir, FFA, and student athletic training. Grayson also is involved as a member of the Vanderveer Street Church of Christ And on top of these many extracurricular activities in Grayson's life, he also maintains a 3.7 GPA. After high school, Grayson plans to attend Abilene Christian University to earn a degree in biblical text. As Grayson's choir director, I personally wish that I had Grayson for 4 full years. But I am thankful that I've had him as a student for these past 2 years. It is an understatement when I say that I have been blessed to work with Grayson. As he prepares for his next chapter in life, I encourage him always to do his best, be a leader, and continually shine for Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. Grayson, I look forward to the exciting promises and adventures that God will lead you to and through while at ACU. Please help me in recognizing Grayson Barnett as the choir student of the month. And now I'd like to invite Mr. Andrew Hicks and Cooper Student. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's my treat to be here tonight with you. Cooper and I just ran over from rehearsal from the stadium, so we'll try to make this brief. It's my pleasure to nominate November Student of the Month for the band in the EDC, as Mr. Cooper Studeville. Cooper is a member of the Burnett High School Band and serves as the head drum major for Street 4. Cooper is a shining example of excellent student leadership and work ethic that embodies the essence of spirit, pride, and honor. Day in and day out, he is the first at school, the last to leave, and always a positive role model for his peers. Cooper is a kind, funny, and responsible young man that has led his peers and band program during a tough school year. In his free time, Cooper enjoys building computers and helping raise livestock and home with his parents. Cooper will be attending Texas State University next year in pursuit of a degree in computer science. It's my pleasure to introduce to you the band November Student of the Month, Mr. Cooper Studeville.
I'm going to ask all of our students of the month to stay in place just for a few more minutes. We're going to be taking your picture in just a moment. But first, we want to introduce another student of the month, and that is our Quest High School Student of the Month. And Ms. Dina Thomas will be making that presentation.
Such an honor to be here to present our Quest Student of the Month. And I have a statement from Dr. Marvin, since he couldn't be here tonight. But first, of course, I want to say a few things. I have to tell you that it was truly a blessing when Trinity decided to come to Quest High School. He brought with him a lot of joy, lots of smiles. He has mentored other new students who come in after him. He's a conversationalist, and he knows the importance of developing relationships. He's just such a kind young man. He is almost finished with us, and we are not happy about that. He's wonderful to have on our campus. Dr. Marvin says QH Student of the Month for November and December is Trinity Whitworth. Mr. Whitworth was selected from our campus by all staff members. Trinity started this year at Quest High School and has accomplished so much in such a short time. He has consistently finished his lessons each day and comes to school with a positive attitude. Trinity has an infectious smile. You can't see it, but he does. And a positive attitude each and every day. Trinity has a very special talent in creating characters and creating various character voices. Trinity is excited to start a new job locally while he can pursue his interest in animation and character development. Trinity is a dedicated student as we have ever had at Quest High School during my tenure, and his work ethic is to be commended. Trinity is very close to finishing his graduation requirements and is set to graduate this year with his classmates. Please help me recognize this young man's great attitude as he represents Quest High School with spirit, pride, and honor. Mr. Trinity Whitworth.
the month and their families transition over to the tile side. We're going to be taking pictures. I think there's worth one more round of applause for all of our students of the month. Congratulations. The next item on our agenda is our report on operational and instructional issues related to COVID-19. I'll start off by giving current case count. Since the beginning of school, we've had 34 confirmed cases of COVID on campuses. We currently have approximately 15 active cases in the district. So the past couple of weeks we have seen an increase in the number of cases. And we've had 85 students or staff quarantined for close contact. I think what's important to point out on that is that we are seeing very little evidence of any spread taking place within campuses. Those that are being quarantined because of close contact that are occurring at school, we've not seen those cases develop into positive COVID cases. And so I was speaking with our medical advisor today, and she made the point that really students are almost safer at school than they are out in the general public. And we have evidence that supports that. You've probably heard the news about Llano ISD today going fully remote, and then Fredericksburg had closed their middle school, but then has announced that their elementary, middle, and high school have all gone remote. And their benchmark was a 2% COVID positivity rate. And that has caused people to ask questions of Burnett CISD. So at what level would you ever consider making the entire district or a campus go to remote? And the simple answer is we don't have a predetermined number or percentage of cases of quarantine that would cause us to go fully remote as a district or at a specific campus. We do monitor cases very closely every day. We're talking about the numbers, but we believe it's so important to individually review each positive case, each close contact, so that we're not basing any decision on a predetermined threshold, but rather about the circumstances around those positive cases. If you told me that we had 10 positive cases on a campus, it makes a difference if those 10 are at the same grade level among teaching staff versus they're spread out among multiple students across a campus that's 500, 700, up to 1,000 students. And so we look at it from that standpoint. As I mentioned, we had a conversation today with our Burnett County Medical Advisor and Dr. Madrigal. She believes that schools should remain open to the greatest extent possible, like we do. And she also agrees with the way in which we're evaluating our COVID cases. Our goal is to keep the campuses open, to keep the district fully open to the greatest extent possible, continue to offer parents that choice of having the in-person learning, knowing that we may have to make adjustments in some of our operations. For example, we only have so many certified bus drivers. If we ended up losing a number of them because of quarantining at one certain time, there might be a day in which we might have to combine routes, and that would adjust the schedule for pickups and drop-offs. Or there might be a scenario in which we would not be able to provide transportation on a specific route. But we believe it's important to adjust our operations rather than to say we're just not going to offer school at all. And so we are seeing this uptick. And so we're encouraging our students and our staff to practice those COVID mitigating processes, wearing a face covering, social distancing to the greatest extent possible so that we can continue to operate school as normal. Any questions about case count or the threshold at which we would make decisions about going fully remote? As you know, each week we report to you the amount of leave that is being used by staff. As a reminder, the Board of Trustees set aside $405,000 for COVID leave. That consists of 10 federal leave days and 5 local extended leave days. Of the 10 federal leave days, since July, we've used 245 and a half days at a cost to the district of $6,252. And then of the 5 days of local extended leave, since August, we've used 14 of those days at a cost of $975. You may have read in the news about the rapid COVID testing program that is available to districts. We have participated in the conference call with the commissioner reviewing that information, and we're actually in discussions with a possible partner to help us distribute those tests. We would be eligible in our first month to receive upwards of 600 rapid tests that are 15-minute rapid tests, have a 98% accuracy rate for positives and negatives. And the program that we are having discussions about beginning would focus on those students or staff members that are symptomatic. And so using the test to confirm that they do have COVID or they do not have COVID. Unfortunately, we're seeing situations in which some staff members have symptoms, are having to quarantine themselves, get tested, and then they're away from the school district 3 to upwards of 5 days in some cases, only to find out that they were negative. And so the number, as you've probably read in the paper, substitute teachers are at a shortage across the state and nation. And so every time we have someone out, that puts a hardship on the entire system. In terms of remote versus in-person learning, as of Friday of last week, we had 3,097 students. And of those, 372 are remote learners, or 12% of our students. And so that number has just gradually decreased over time. Related to that, the commissioner recently shared information from the Texas Education Agency about starting to remove remote learning options for students who are struggling with academics or attendance. And I'm going to let Dr. Jones share a little bit of information about that.
Okay, thank you. Previous guidance allowed districts to provide remote learning options only for a whole campus or a whole grade level at a time. And similarly, you could discontinue remote learning only a whole campus or a whole grade level at a time. But now districts have 3 options. You can either continue with your remote as you have been. You can choose to close that down for a campus or a grade level. And if students are absent, they're not present for funding or for attendance purposes, either one. But the third option now is that we can provide remote options to all the students in a grade level or campus, with the exception of students who have demonstrated a struggle with full-time remote learning. And so today, as Keith said, we have about 372 students in full-time remote learning. And from campus estimates, about 150 of those students are struggling in that remote learning full-time. That means that they're not on track to promote for the year because of their grades, or it could mean that they're losing credit for graduation requirements in high school because of their grades, or they may have 7 or more unexcused absences, which begins some truancy processes. And so for students who are struggling at that level with full-time remote learning, we can notify them that we will be discontinuing their remote option as long as we give them 2 weeks of notice for them to have a conference with the school to appeal. And that appeal can be based on medical need. And so there's also a form that the state provided that students' families can have signed by a healthcare provider. It lists the CDC determined high-risk groups. And so if a healthcare provider signs that student or the immediate household members have a concern and need to continue remote learning, then they could have that certification signed so they could continue with that. So if we decided to pursue that for the second semester start, we would be notifying families that applies to in early December, so that they would have a full 10 school days to be able to appeal. And so we're exploring that. And we talked with our principals last week to get some initial feedback, and we'll be talking with them again tomorrow to try to firm up how we might proceed if we do that. But I do want to be clear that the students who are remote learners and are being successful, which some of them really are, they're doing fine. They can stay remote. This is not discontinuing remote options for those who are able to do that at home. It's for those students who are just not attending. They're not logging in, they're not doing their work, or they're very much unable to do it with whatever level of support that they have in the context where they're learning. We do want to emphasize that parents would have the final say when it comes to health and safety. They're able to get that medical certification. So that's the new option that the commissioner has just recently laid out that we are processing through, whether it would be a benefit to some of our students who are full-time remote learners.
Any questions about anything that we've reported on COVID related? If not, then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Gehring for our financial report.
And they can't leave. They still have to stay here. One piece I do want to add to what Keith had mentioned about enrollment, our remote students, whenever that report would come out and that number was going down, I was always nervous total enrollment was going down, that those kids were leaving, not coming on campus, but that is not the case. Enrollment has stayed steady. So they are coming back into the classroom.
And I guess we should give credit to principals because many of them, especially here in the last handful of weeks, it's been because campuses have been picking up the phone and saying, look, you're not doing so well. Why don't you come back? We can support you better if you're here. And so I really appreciate the effort that our campus principals and staff have made to try and get students back to be successful in person.
So with that, we will move into the financials, and this will be quick and easy. On page 15 of your report, I just wanted to point out the food service financial reports. And that's where it shows that the food service fund is now 98% funded federally. So that's an exciting program that the district's taking advantage of, and all students having the ability to eat. The best way to say it, we get reimbursed for all students. So all students eat free, and we're able to get reimbursed for all of them. One other note on that is we will continue to have and have been having families fill out free and reduced lunch applications. So even though we don't have to worry about free and reduced lunch, if kids are getting charged that, it affects a whole lot of the programs within the district. So that form is still out there, and folks are being asked to fill that out. Page 18, I'd like to talk about tax collections. And we had one of those moments where we were looking at our tax report and had to take a big, deep breath because it was tax collections were down about 5% from prior years. So got us really good and nervous, but I talked to Stan, and it's as simple as timing. The statements went out 2 weeks later than they did in the prior year. So folks hadn't got their bills yet to pay their taxes by the time our report was run. So if we're still 5% down next month, I'll have a very different tone, but we anticipate those collections to bounce back as we move into next month. Final thing I have to add is next month, we will kind of make a full circle. So the auditors will be here and present the financial report and the district's audit, and we will start talking about budget for 2021, 2022, and we'll talk about that calendar. So lock up 1 year and get right into the next year. We'll get that started next month. Any questions?
And the comptroller didn't leave us with great news. Again, no surprise, but he did formalize his report, his early report to the legislature, indicating a $4.6 billion deficit at the state level. And so the good news is there is $8.8 billion in the rainy day fund. And so, you know, our legislature has not really liked to tap that fund, but I would say it's raining. So they need to definitely consider tapping that fund.
It's raining in Harvey too.
Yes. So that will bring us now to item E, and that is a bond program update. And we've got a presentation I want to share with you. And Mr. Field, you may want to move to Earl's seat. Well, I'm going to be pointing some to provide a little bit of orientation to. Thank you, sir. And so I want to share some information with you about some of the work we've been doing the past month. And before I do that, I want to make sure that you know some of the people in the room. From Claycomb Architects, we've got Bo Ledoux and Jolie Willett are here. And then from our Facilities Community Advisory Committee, we've got Michelle Hudgens, Elton Heine, and David Bennett. They participated in our two facilities committees. And so I'll be sharing some of that information with you. And I'm going to give them an opportunity at some point to provide a little bit of input if they would like to, and they can make sure they keep me honest on what I'm saying. So you'll recall back on October 19th, the board began discussing a possible bond program to really address three issues. One, take pressure off the operating budget. You know, the reality is school districts only receive funding for daily operations. We don't receive funding necessarily for capital improvement renovations. To manage construction costs, the reality is whatever projects we do, we're going to pay less for them today than we are a year from now. And then finally, preparing for the student enrollment growth that we know is coming. We've kind of hit the pause button on enrollment growth, but it's clearly coming. And our demographer reminded us of the D.R. Horton factor. So there in Bertram and in Burnett, we have a D.R. Horton subdivision, and D.R. Horton is a national builder, and they don't build homes based on guess that the people are coming. They build homes based on real knowledge and data that say people are coming to a specific area. And then I just saw this within the last week, home builder D.R. Horton posts 81% sales spike as coronavirus prompts flights to the suburb. And that's exactly what our demographer had indicated that he was seeing, is that homes like being built at Peppermill and Dove Meadows, it's families wanting to get away from the city limits of Austin and Pflugerville and Round Rock and come to a more rural area. And D.R. Horton is doing it better than almost any home builder in the nation at this time. So also during that meeting, you'll recall that the Board of Trustees, you reviewed the 2020 bond program and all the projects associated with those. You also reviewed some additional projects that the administration had deemed important based on the delay of the bond. For example, the high school HVAC system, with the delay in the bond, it needs to be part of this bond. It can't wait for the next bond, or due to COVID-related issues. And so you'll recall that we talked about making some renovations to our nurses station to address the need for especially an isolation room in addition to a nurses station. The Board of Trustees then, you asked the administration to go and meet with the Facilities Community Advisory Committee. And we did that, and I'll be sharing some information with you about that. And then I want you to know, between the time in which you gave us the marching order to meet with the FCAC, the administration also added a handful of additional projects to the list for consideration of the FCAC. And so those projects include asphalt at Transportation Employee Parking Lot and add lighting. So currently they're on Wood Street. It is just a base material parking lot, no lighting. And you'll recall we've had an incident before where a driver was partially nicked by a car that was driving through there early in the morning, much too fast. Concrete the Transportation Road off of 963. And so there is a road that runs in the back of Transportation right off of the 963 gate. So we want to concrete that because it is failing right now. It's an asphalt road and failing. We want to asphalt the tennis court parking lot. That was part of our original 2019 discussion. And then we have some HVAC throughout the district that needs replacement: transportation, food service warehouse, our current weight room, and then the softball locker room. And then we also, since we last met, we defined more specifically the projects for the technology proposition, and I'll be sharing those with you in just a moment. But all of these items were things that were on our to-do list, but as we lost capacity in the operating budget, we felt like at least the Facility Community Advisory Committee needed to have a chance to see those, be eligible for possible bond funding, because we do not have operating funds to necessarily take care of those projects. So the Facility Community Advisory Committee, FCAC, met on November 2nd and 9th, and we provided, their purpose was really to provide that honest feedback as we develop a potential bond program to maintain and enhance district programs. So they reviewed the projects, the pricing, and even the propositions and how they were combined. Some of that, as you know, is required by law, and some of it is some of our choice on how we might categorize some of the projects. And so we're going to get into The projects, you have a handout. I am not going to go item for item on this, but I want you, feel free to stop me if there's an item you want us to discuss from one of the project list. I'll start out though, before we talk about the specific projects, and remind you that our current bond capacity is $63 million. So that means that we could approve a bond today at $63 million and would not have any impact to the tax rate. That bond would be a 20-year term. And as a reminder, because we're so aggressive in paying off our debt early, our bonds typically only last 15 years on average. The projected interest rate for that bond would be 2.42%. And that assumes a 5% growth in property value year 1 through 6, and then it assumes no property growth in years 7 through 20. So very conservative assumption. Those people that ask the question or make the statement, well, yeah, you're going to hold the taxes steady for a year or two, but then you're going to have to raise it because you have to service the debt. And our projections would show that that's not necessary. And during a pandemic in 2020, the property growth rate was at 6%. So again, very conservative assumptions going forward. So embedded in the cost that you're about to see, where we would be using architects and construction manager at risk, those fees are included. There's 1% included for contingency and 4% for inflation. Although we are seeing a little bit of evidence that maybe inflation is getting up to the 6% level. So as a reminder, a 2021 bond would not have to be called until February. So we still have a little bit of time to watch the market. The market is really set by people bidding jobs. And so the more jobs that get bid between now and the time we call the bond, we'll have more information to base some of our decision making on. And so Burnett High School is our first set of projects. You've seen all of those projects previously, a total of $3.4 million. I wanted to highlight for you at least the working plan for the nurses station at each one of our campuses. And so on this plan, we've added this isolation room, and really this is the reception area. It's really up here, but we would just back the reception area up and add an isolation area. And so we wanted to provide an isolation area in every situation and a system that would provide cleaner air in the nurses station. At Quest High School, the cost would be right at $700,000 to do the work there. At Burnett Middle School, the cost would be right at $3.7 million. The nurses station here, currently the nurses station is here in that middle band hall building. So right across the hall, basically from the band hall, the nurse does everything in this area right here. Originally a coach's office. And so right across the way is the existing middle school weight room. And so the plan would be to create a new nurses station suite in that weight room, and then keep this back end available for storage with the roll-up door. This is just next to impossible to have someone with that's COVID positive sitting in the room at the same time that you have other sick students. Bertram Elementary, total project would be $10 million. As a reminder, the biggest cost at Bertram Elementary is the addition of the classroom addition, where we're going to be adding right at 250 students, and then enclosing connecting all of the different buildings with hallways. Here, we're going to maintain where the nurse's office is in that administration building, and we're just going to add a wall and create an isolation room within that same station currently. RJ Ritchie Elementary, it'd be $2.2 million. I did want to show the conceptual drawing for the drive. So this is 963. Kind of hard to see on this drawing, but you have this outer lane that could be used for queuing. You've got the lane next to it that could also be used for queuing. And probably we would queue up to this point and then collapse into one lane. But then you can also see we've moved the parking from this side, because in the morning, in the afternoon, if you're parked here, you're not getting out of there. So we've moved it to this side where it's pull-in parking, and there's a pass-through lane that's available. So we've addressed the issue of we can get more cars off of 963, and we've created a situation in which morning or afternoon, you could pull in or out of the campus if you need to. Those were the two main issues at Shady Grove Elementary. And the minute we fixed it at Shady Grove, we started having people say, why can't we do that for RJ Ritchie? And it was simply a money issue. If you'll recall, Shady Grove, that's a $700,000 project that we paid for out of operating budget. So we had the available funds to be able to do that. We do not have, given the number of reductions that we're seeing today and we expect to see in the future, we do not have the budget to be able to do this project out of our operating budget. And then here, the nurses station is here. And what we're going to do is just take the room next door, put in a door to create an isolation. This is the counselor. The counselor is going to go right across the hall into an existing office. So we're just doing a little bit of flip-flopping and adding a door. Shady Grove Elementary, being our newest campus, renovated, only $453,000. Let me share a couple of things with you. One, the nurses station. So originally when you walk into into Shady Grove, when you walk in to the left was the original, the nurse's office was over here, along with, at the time, assistant principal. We're talking way back in the day. So when it was renovated, the nurses station got moved when you walk in the building to the right down the hall in this room, and these walls don't exist. And so the original project was to add a restroom here because students were having to, if they had to use the restroom from the nurses station, they had to go across the hall to the group gang restroom. And so we believe the best solution is to move the nurse's office back to its original location and create this suite with nurse's station, office. There's a restroom already there, and then an isolation room that can be created right there. And then currently there are 3 small offices being used for things like speech or small group. And so back in this old, the today nurse's office, we're creating 3 areas for those 3 offices. The other thing that we wanted to address, or at least get feedback on, was the entryway. And so those who have walked into Shady Grove before, you know, when you walk in, you've got this vestibule, and there's a service window and a door right here. And when we went through all of the elementary campus, well, all of our campuses, and added a secure or a service window, Shady Grove was one in which we did it the most cost-effective way possible. We took the existing vestibule and we just punched in a service window and had a door, and the door was there. And so when people come in, they take care of all of their business in this vestibule. And so if it's really windy or nasty outside, you open the door, you get the cold weather right there with it. So one idea for, actually it's option 1, it's the one that we are leaning towards, is keeping this vestibule, close up the service window and door that's here, create a new reception area. And so you get the benefit of having the weather stay out. You have a new access door into the office area, doors that take you out into the hallway. And then we have a service window that you can be serviced in a more traditional reception setting. This looks very similar to what happens at RJ Ritchie, where you have the vestibule and then you have a reception area where you interact with the receptionist. This is actually, if you can recall, this is actually a slanted wall. So we've squared this off and brought this out into the hallway, which is kind of just a wasted space anyways. Another option would be just to take that vestibule wall and extend it into the building so that you create this larger. Now, what you've got a ton more space, but what you don't have is when you open the door and it's really cold, windy, you're still going to get that weather effect coming into the building. So those of you who have interacted at Shady Grove and had that experience, what thoughts do you have about that as a solution?
I like one better than two,
Mhm.
because you're right. If the north wind's blowing, it's horrible there. And then you put 10 people in there and pack a few in at the same time.
Right. And so this would allow, I mean, you're not gonna get a ton of people in here, but you do have the ability to then have a little bit of overflow and you're
spillover.
still somewhat indoors. Shady Grove is one of the most challenging campuses because that pre-K through second grade, a lot more interactions that happen there than any of our other campuses. We don't have as many people pick up kids, drop off kids like we do at Shady Grove.
Is there any way, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Is there any way that we could present this to the staff to kind of just get their feedback?
Absolutely. In fact, we walked it with Tasha, but she hasn't seen the final drawing yet. We just finalized the drawing today.
Would the library be across from?
The library is directly across,
Okay.
right here. So this is the hallway
Uh-huh.
right here. And this used to almost mirror this. Kind of had this Y effect coming out to the main hallway.
So if you have a visitor and they go to leave, with this, they can go right out the doors. Isn't there usually a turn in your badge, check out back through the office procedure?
Yes.
And
They-
so I could see them, you're busy over there in the reception area and they
Yep.
come from down the hall or the nurse and they turn and go right out.
Mhm.
But does the other one stop that too?
Well, it just,
Looking there,
It
doesn't
slows
really-
them down.
I mean, it puts them in the same room, but
Yeah.
doesn't really stop them.
It doesn't necessarily mean
Yeah,
they
it
stop them.
the reality with the service window, it probably, at all of our campuses, there's a likelihood that you're going to blow through and not always return the badge. So yes, and I do want to, as a reminder, everything you're seeing is conceptual. So we've not sat down and done deep programming. It's kind of like the walking track at each of the campuses. The exact location has not been determined. This is all for pricing purposes and concept purposes.
Hey, go back to one, Keith. What if you move the reception desk back up on two? Flip to two real quick. See where the reception desk is?
Mm-hmm.
Now go back to one. Move it back there and make that almost an L shape, a bigger waiting room, I guess you could say. Like that entire thing where you're coming in and you can go, instead of going straight out to the library,
Oh,
straight
right.
at the library,
You're
it
saying
makes them
make
almost-
this like part of it?
have your go straight down and that's where your exit is. Come
Right.
in the main doors and then kind of get to turn right, talk to the reception, then go out in front of the reception. Out of the,
We do have to, because this is being treated as reception and secretary's office. So we do have two people there. The secretary in this configuration doesn't have her own office space.
You just pull that wall over?
And actually three people, because we also have a part-time receptionist at Shady Grove to help with especially the afternoon volume.
What did you say, Suzanne?
Maybe angle that wall on the right to include that exit door? I don't know. Architect.
Just trying to figure out a way, like Mark was saying, that you, I mean, especially there, to, because you are really supposed to sign out, but nobody ever does. You can just walk right out the door. That might be
Are you supposed to give
supposed
your
to
badge?
supposed to
Yeah.
give your tag back, but I mean, now nobody.
Buy cheaper badges.
Well, I think it's a matter of accountability to see who's in the building.
Sure.
Are they still just as like sticky name tag?
Yes.
badges? Okay.
Well, let us keep thinking on that, but generally I think what we heard is we don't like the existing, and so we want to do something. And so we just want to know that you want us to keep moving towards something that creates some type of natural reception area for parents.
Or maybe move the reception back where the waiting room is so you can see who's going out as well as coming in. I'm just worried about going out, but space is space. It's limited.
The wall with the chairs on it, you just sit around.
Right, put that where the reception is so they can turn and look backwards behind them who's walking out. You can, here's your tag right there. At least you have a face to face with a couple feet rather than three everyone.
Well, let us keep working on it. We'll bring other options forward if we're talking about this project in the future, then I'm excited because that means the bond is passed. So I'll bring you we'll bring in whatever drawing you want, right? All right. Parking lot and drive improvements. So $4.4 million. And just to show, I talked about it already, but the new tennis court parking lot is included. It's an asphalt, the transportation road. So that's actually this road right here. Here's 963. And then this back road, as you enter transportation, main parking lot's over here, but this area right here is an asphalt road that is just completely gated out because of the bus traffic. And then we did add the transportation employee parking lot, and that is right here, right next to maintenance. And so the idea is to create an asphalt lot and then have the lights kind of flood Wood Street in addition to the parking lot. District-wide improvements. Wanted to point out that, again, I've already mentioned it, but we included the replacement of the HVAC units at the different areas that are not campus related. That's for a total cost of $2.3 million. That does include $200,000 of band instruments, and it does include $500,000 of high-impact furniture at selected classrooms. And then under technology, I shared with you that we had provided more detail. The technology would actually fall under Proposition C. By law, it has to be a separate proposition. It's for $4.2 million. I've underlined teacher devices because our FCAC actually suggested that we consider adding teacher devices. And so something that we've always talked about, but we've never pulled the trigger on, is providing a laptop and docking station for each of our staff members instead of a desktop, especially given COVID and staff members sometimes having to go home. This would allow them to take their workstation with them. And Matt has found a way to also include a full-size screen. So when they're at their desk in their classroom, they have a full-size screen, laptop and docking station. And so it's like working off of a desktop, but they've got the convenience of being able to take it and go. And so credit to our FCAC. That's why you go and talk to people and just don't do it all in-house. It also includes servers and switches replacement. We moved all of the access controls to classroom doors to the technology proposition. We felt like it better fit there. Security camera replacement at Burnett High School. that system is failing, so that's under the technology. And then replacing all of the classroom data projectors. And so we were just thinking replacing half of them. And as we talked about removing the pressure from our operating budget, again, the FCAC recommended that we go ahead and get the money to replace all of them, but don't necessarily replace all of them at the same time. And then our classroom telephone system. If you'll recall, back now 9 years ago, we didn't have a telephone in the district that was located in a classroom. But now that system is starting to age out, and it's very much a part of our safety plan. So again, technology would be for $4.2 million. So that brings us to our athletic projects. This first set at the top represents Proposition B. As a reminder, all athletic projects have to be in a separate proposition away from building and renovations. You'll note the detail that on this item, I've actually provided line item pricing. And so it includes the new high school weight room, baseball and girls soccer locker rooms, and restrooms. It includes the press box at the football stadium. And I'll talk about that in just a minute, but our FCAC recommended that that be included back in for consideration. And it includes the artificial turf at the baseball and softball field. And then for middle school athletics, we've got this project of creating a middle school athletic complex that involves a turf field, 6-lane track, fencing, addressing the drainage, and adding bleachers for seating for 300, and then the sidewalks to make it ADA compliant. And then also based on recommendations of our FCAC, creating the middle school weight room out of the existing weight room. And so follow how all of this has to happen. In order to create the nurses station at middle school, we're going to utilize the existing middle school weight room. Then we're going to take the existing weight room that's by the practice field and turn it into a middle school locker room or middle school weight room. And then the new building over by the 3rd Street would be the high school weight room. And then kind of a cleanup item, because we're creating that track and field, we've got to relocate some of our track and field, discus, shot put, long jump, and triple jump. So that is for $11.5 million. And then the Student Activity Center is for $8.9 million. And we're going to talk about more. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. So I've already mentioned our FCAC suggested that the existing weight room by the current practice fields be at least addressed. And so we've got budget allotted for flooring, painting, and repairing the wall covering. And I forgot to add it up there, LED lighting. And then as I mentioned at the other line item where we're taking care of all of our mechanical systems, replacing the HVAC there. And as I mentioned, it would be scheduled then to be the middle school weight room. One of the things I'll point out is because we had a high school that then moved to another high school and it left and we created a middle school, we never really have created completely separate middle school facilities, high school facilities. And yet if you're designing a middle school today, you're adding all of those facilities. And so this bond, we believe, takes care of all of that issue and truly separates high school and middle school having their own athletic complexes. As I mentioned, the FCAC suggested that we add back the press box for consideration. This is the Taylor ISD press box. It is a modular press box that's just under 500 square feet. It doesn't require an elevator. It's broken up into, you can tell, 3 different sections. We were just talking today that this area is just a little, you just barely see a little open fence area, kind of a breezeway, a great area for a filmer to be. So you've got a filmer station here and here. All the access is on the back side. I know Mark Edmondson would be super excited to know that there is HVAC included in the press box. The reality is, we had mentioned to the committee that we received a phone call asking for us to be game of the week. But when they sent us all the requirements to be game of the week, we really couldn't meet their demands. And part of that was having press box space and place for cameras to set up. And so we would come a lot closer to being able to host an event like that in the future. The Student Activity Center, designed right at 50,000 square feet. It's 20-yard line to 20-yard line, so 60 yards, one end zone, 10-yard sideline so that the band can march off of the field and simulate being on a competition field. And then we just envision it being used by every conceivable group, PE, band, any of our sports teams, drill team, cheer, just a multi-purpose, multi-use building.
I have a question. So, just playing devil's advocate, if the community wanted to utilize the activity center, would we do that?
I think we'd have to have discussions about that. In that case, it would most definitely take a facilitator. So we would have to make decisions about how we would want to allow that to be used. You know, we have said that the middle school field complex would be available, especially to our partners like at BYFL, and to be rented by groups. And so that's a definite conversation we need to have. I mean, we had conversations about would we ever, you know, on a couple of times a month, open it up and almost like open gym and allow certain grade levels at certain times to come into the facility.
I like the name.
As a reminder, back in 2019, we originally included some significant painting and ceiling tile replacement, and none of that is included in this proposition. So as a recap, anything to do with building, renovation, or buses falls under Proposition A. And Proposition A, if we were having an election today, it would say $27.4 million. Proposition B is all of the athletic projects except for the Student Activity Center, and it's $11.5 million as it sits today, estimated. Proposition C would be the technology proposition, and it's $4.2 million. And then Proposition D, the Student Activity Center, would be $8.9 million. And it would be under the current configuration, a separate proposition. And I'm going to share with you in just a minute, that was based on suggestions from the FCAC. So that brings the total A, B, C, and D to $52.2 million. So when we talked to the FCAC about when should the bond take place, we had discussed with them a May 2021 bond because of enrollment growth and because of cost of projects and because we need to relieve pressure off of the operating budget, knowing that the legislature is going to meet in January, pass a budget bill May 30th, and then we're going to live the effects and have to build a budget probably with less money during the summer to begin school that August. And so when we asked at the end of our first meeting, we said, what's your level of agreement on a scale of 1 to 5 regarding a May 2021 bond? And the average rating of level of agreement was 4.3. So they supported a May 2021 bond election. The FCAC strongly supported Proposition A, really no questions, supported all of the projects, and had a level of agreement of 4.8 on a scale of 1 to 5. Proposition C, the technology proposition, strongly supported. In fact, we came in probably a little light. We didn't have the teacher devices, And so they actually encouraged us to go back to the drawing board and make sure that there weren't any significant needs that needed to be included. So it was at agreement level of 4.8. And then the SEAC supported the athletic projects, but not at the same level as the building and technology propositions. The average rating of level of agreement was 3.9. Their biggest concern that we heard voiced was having the student activity center included with the other athletic projects, afraid that it would be kind of the target for wanting to fail a proposition. And so that's why it's currently listed as two propositions. Proposition B for all athletics except for Proposition D, Student Activity Center. I think it would be safe to say that there were members on the committee that clearly are still fearful of the amount of athletic budget in comparison to the rest of it, and the Student Activity Center, even as it sits alone, could possibly bring a coordinated effort of we need to fail the bond altogether. So our FCAC members, David Bennett, Michelle Hudgens, Elton Heine, fact check me. Is there anything that I didn't say that you would want to make sure that the Board of Trustees hears? Or do y'all have any questions for our FCAC members?
I don't know that I necessarily have a question for them, but, and I hate to even ask it this way, but I don't know any other way. If Prop A passes, let's say we go with A, B, C, D. If Prop A passes and B fails, what are you going to do with item G at the BMS Nurses Station? Because it's a trickle-down effect.
Right. We would have to, so we've got money set aside for heavier renovation, and we might have to find a temporary space or a classroom space and do more lighter renovation to create that. Because I think we're committed to creating the isolation area in addition to the nurses station. But you're right, those two do go hand in hand.
You put more contingency money in there? In that one, in case that fails, you go to more contingency money in item A,
Mm-hmm.
in case item B fails. I don't see item B failing personally. I think you get out there and sell it to them. Elementary mothers coming up, and less game times, and that's where you're gonna have to sell that program right there. I know all I know is excited about that complex there, own middle school facility
Mm-hmm.
where their kids can go play and get home.
Sure.
I think with the student activity center, we could get the band parents and 3 to 4 jolting parents.
I know when Andrew Hicks when he first heard about the possibility, he was very excited about the thought that we had even thought about a 10-yard sideline so that they could simulate full marching on and off of a field. They were.
Who has one? Does Taylor? Is it?
Lano has one, not as big as that, but
Taylor's in it, please.
is there anyone else, Kurt, that you know of that close?
Lano's is the biggest in the area. Taylor did build an indoor a couple of years ago. It's not that big, not as big as Lano did.
I mean, what's the feedback there? Are they getting none of the use of it? Or, I mean, is it
I
maybe
think
using it?
Lano loves theirs. I think,
Use them to sell. I mean,
We joke just the fact that Lano has one and we don't should be a selling
part of the
point.
sale, but-
Did they have any community pushback at all? Do you know?
Yes, a little bit. But again, it was all part of a larger bond package,
Oh,
and they didn't have these new rules of it being in its own separate proposition. I mean, I think as you've seen, athletic projects are always a little bit of a lightning rod. During the 2014 bond, we did everything that we said. We got all the benefits that we said we were going to get, and yet it was the lightning rod project at every presentation I made. How could you think about turfing that field or spending that money, and yet we've saved water, We've saved man hours. We've saved money on not having to irrigate it, not having to provide chemicals or upkeep of it. And so it's done everything, and we play on it all the time. You know, the turfing, the baseball and softball, we just felt like we had to put it out there at least for discussion again because of the number of competitions that we have missed or have to go somewhere else to play because of weather. And that instantly reduces any question about our ability to play at our home field. In addition to, you know, that we are short in terms of staffing for our grounds. And if we had a turfed middle school field, turfed baseball, softball, I'm taking an entire FTE, a whole person, and removing them from that complex and putting them back on campuses in other areas. And so, you know, if we don't, you know, part of the conversation we have to have is, are we satisfied with the level of the grounds upkeep, or do we need to add another person? And you add another person, you're looking at a 30,000 plus add. But then all the chemicals, all the upkeep, you know, there's just so little upkeep for those fields.
I do have something to ask you guys. When you all were going through, did you feel in your gut that everybody was on board with this in the committee?
Yes,
There's some questions, but I think at the end of it all, it was important.
everything was important. And, you know, just the importance was to put the activity center on its own so it didn't maybe hurt something itself. And then that could be a crapshoot too, that could hurt it. Some people that don't have any involvement with it, whatever, may say, I'm not voting for that. But they might not vote for the whole thing for that either. I mean, because that's what I know a lot of people, and a lot of them talk about that. Is it necessary when we get 40 to 50 days of rain per year, actual to rain something out? Do you really need a practice facility indoors?
It just provides a lot of flexibility with band practicing. I mean, right now, you know, we have to go early morning or late in the afternoon, and you get the ventilation going through that building and the ability to kind of practice summer conditioning. I mean, there's just, I would envision that being used.
It's really not a stretch to say annually you're gonna have 1,000 to 1,200 kids using that facility, and by my estimation, it's probably about 230 to 250 days a year.
I mean, that's something that needs to.
And if you can get 1,000 of those parents to get out and vote for it, you're going past it.
Yep.
That's a big number.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
You gotta get those folks.
Activity center too is a great choice, just like it was, not calling it a practice field, it's the junior high field. That how we sell it and market it is gonna be huge, especially when we go out and try to promote the bond. We're gonna be able to sell it a lot differently than, say, just the football indoor facility.
Sure.
And it for sure is a smaller pool of voters, right? For May.
Yeah, in fact, if I've got a couple more slides to kind of talk about bonds and
Because we're all for it. We hope it passes. We hope we get everything on there. Because we need it. Everybody that we were on there thinks we ought to need it all. And we hope we can vote at elementaries. That's what we need to vote. Can you still do that, Keith?
the last election we had, they did not allow that. So we're going to have to ask, but they were not in favor of the branch voting.
We get a lot of positive moments.
Yeah. So let me wrap up and share just a little bit of information, take you back. I know that we've all lived this, but just remind you of some facts and figures. So the 2014 bond, $26.75 million. Remember, we had to go out and tell people that we were raising the tax rate by 7.9 cents. We only raised it 6.9 cents. And so up to the $1.33. And just as a reminder, today we're $1.14. And that passed 52% to 47%, 290 votes. And we had, 6,000 people voting because that was when Governor Abbott was elected. So then the 2019 bond, $33.1 million. we projected a 7.5 cent tax rate decrease and put us at $1.18. And again, today we're at $1.14, and that failed 52% to 47%. We lost by 149 votes. And what we know is that there was voter apathy in terms of a lot of people that said, I'm a yes, just didn't get out and go vote. And in talking with them, surprisingly, it's almost that we lowered the tax rate too much. People thought it's a given, it's going to pass. And we had the constitutional amendment talking about state income tax. And that brought out a group of people who were predisposed to say no to taxes. And they assumed that the bond election would raise their taxes. And so some of the reasons, you remember this, too much debt, although we're at $27 million worth of debt today. We paid off 1.5 million in August. We're paying off another 1.5 million. Just the fact that we don't take bonds 20 years, we do them 15. Taxes would increase. They haven't in the past 5 years. Some people were critical of the athletic projects and the technology project. We're just gonna have to tell people today is a different world than when we tried to pass the last bond in terms of technology. No school district can afford the level of technology that we are required to have in place in order to educate kids today. And then there was some criticism of maintenance projects like painting. Well, we've removed all the painting in the ceiling tile replacement. 2020 bond, we went right back at it, but because of COVID, we ended up pulling that bond. And again, what did we do? We lowered the tax rate by 3.9 cents to $1.146, the lowest it's ever been in the history of Burnett CISD. We paid off $1.5 million in debt and going to do it again in the spring. One of our committee members asked, is there enough time to sell a bond? We're having to do a lot of work quickly. And yes, so we have to call the bond by February 8th. In fact, our board meeting, I think, is scheduled for February 15th. We would recommend, if we want to move forward, that we'll just do our full board meeting on February 8th. That's 9 weeks between calling it and early voting. And that's plenty of time. Y'all know this, we don't want to be talking about it too early and wear people out, but 9 weeks is plenty of time to sell the bond, provide information. Speaking of, the reminder that the district can provide factual information. We can encourage people to go vote, but the district can't advocate for the bond. Community members and board members can, though. Community members and board members can both say, vote yes, and here's why. And then to your question, Suzanne, on a normal election, going back the past couple of years, 800 to 1,000 voters. And David Vaughn reminded me that, there's a possibility, there are plenty of years that go by that no one runs for city council. And so the turnout could actually be even lower than that, depending on.
Yeah, don't draw any opponents.
I was gonna say versus the 8,800 that voted this time.
Yeah. And just as a reminder, in a May election, we don't have to contract with Williamson or Llano County. The state making us do that, we spent thousands of extra dollars on this November election that I don't think we should have had to have spent. And then just as a reminder, this is where we're at compared to everyone else. And I hear the criticism of, well, property values have allowed that to happen. Of course they have, but they've allowed it to happen for everyone. So why are we the second lowest? Because we've made decisions on a go-forward basis to get us to that point. And then I just think everyone got your tax statement. Look at the bottom of your tax statement. This 5-year comparison is on there. So we've all benefited in Burnett County from the same property value increase. But look what, in terms of tax rate, we've lowered ours by negative 13%. At the same time, the other entities are negative 1.3 or negative 0.53. And then the taxing amount, ours has increased over the last 5 years by 8%, while others are increasing by 22 and 21%. And so I would make the argument that we've made some really smart decisions in the past to get us to this point. And so past 5 years, this Board of Trustees has voted to lower the tax rate to $1.146 today. If we move forward with the propositions exactly as they are today, we could actually pass those 4 propositions and lower our tax rate by at least half a cent to $1.14.1. That's just on the INS side. We believe we're going to lower our tax rate on the M&O side, maybe a penny or two. And so we're going to be facing somewhat of another uphill battle that, yes, we're going to lower the tax rate and be able to accomplish all the projects that we've outlined for you. To give you an idea, just most recent November election. So there were 37 bond elections, 70 propositions, because the legislature makes technology, athletics, music facilities, fine arts facilities have to be in separate propositions. So 37 districts, but they had 70 different A, B, C, D propositions. 57% passed, 42.9% failed, lowest bond approval rating in the last 5 years. Good news is propositions dealing with school buildings, 72% of those passed. Technology propositions, out of those 9, 8 passed, 89%. Athletic recreation propositions, 3 passed, 17%. So November and May look a little bit different oftentimes, but I told the committee, I didn't share this with them to tell them it's not possible. I shared it with them to just say, we've got some work to do to go out and make sure that the people that want to see Burnett CISD attract people, want to see the district enhance its facilities, want to see it maintain its facilities, want to see us manage our budget appropriately, we need to get them to go out and actually vote. And so there's no action associated with tonight. This was about presenting information, having a chance to have you ask any questions, request additional information from us. We would plan on meeting again at the December 14th board meeting, or even if you would like, we could set up a workshop the week of December 7th, whenever would be convenient. So you can kind of think about that and give me feedback on that. But with that, are there any other questions or information that you would like to see us bring forward?
So if we do not pass, and just generally, any of the bond, and we look at the things that need to be done in the district in order just to continue and meet some kind of growth potential, how much of a tax increase are we looking at to fund those kind of issues that are going to have to be funded in the future? With you're trying to do it out of, and I know we can't build a building. We don't have the money. That won't happen. But
I mean, I guess the only thing I can think of is
we have to really sell is that it's going to cost us, going to cost you one way or the other. This is the cheapest way to do it.
We're projecting by 2023 that Bertram Elementary will exceed capacity, even with the pandemic. We're only 36 students off of the demographic projection. So by 2023, we're probably, living in closets and more kids are in classrooms than what they're supposed to be. But our goal has been to plan ahead where we don't reach that time. We blow past 2023 and we don't have relief. We're bringing on portables. We've already priced those, upwards of $700,000. And that doesn't even get us up to the 700 students that we're eventually looking at. But that is, the cost of the portables, utilities, technology, security, all the stuff for these temporary buildings to go sit in a parking lot. And so we're going to spend money and then not recoup that money someday when we can have permanent buildings.
So we're looking at the board probably trying to go to the max increase.
But we really don't have,
right?
There's not a mechanism.
What do we have any kind of room?
We can go get 2 cents,
Well,
2 golden pennies.
Yep.
But then after that, you can still get the 8 additional, then that'll be recaptured. So the community would get taxed a penny and half that penny would go back to the state at least. So really 2 pennies is the only realistic.
But that's going to take a TRE.
Would take voter approval, and that's $300,000, $400,000. So your point's well taken that there is, without this, the answers are slim enough.
And I mean, just to give you perspective, when we were told no on the technology, but we felt like we needed to move forward, And then what was it literally 3 months later? It wasn't that felt like we needed to, it was like, oh my gosh, we have to have this. So that was a $1.4 million maintenance tax note that we're paying $300,000 a year, every year now for the next 4 years. And so, we'd have the ability to go out and get another $1.5 million for terms like that. But that again, we've lost $300,000 this year. We're expecting to lose more money next year, adding pressure to the operating budget. We get $1.5 million. That might fix a couple of roofs. It won't even replace all the HVAC at Burnett High School. And we're putting $300,000 of pressure back on the operating budget each year. So, I mean, it's a great point. We have to make sure that people understand that there's so much about this, about managing our budget, and that the state truly never intended. Tell your story about school finance.
No, I thought it was so boring, nobody would hear it. But when the state education code got put in back in the 50s, whenever it was built in a 3-tier system. Local property taxes to help educate children. The state supplemented that to pay the teachers to educate children, and a 3rd tier for property taxes to fund facilities. So that it was from the roots, it's been designed that way, a 3-tier system with the 3rd being property tax to fund facilities and large capital projects.
And I would say, I didn't put the slide in this deck this time, but you've seen it before. Some people have said, well, go take care of some of this on your own. We have, and we can show you project after project that we have funded locally, like the Shady Grove Drive. But we literally have run out of capacity. 85% of our budget is fixed on people, transportation, and utilities. So we just do not have the ability. And then the thought that we're losing $300,000 this year, and that there's a $4.6 billion state deficit looming, with no promise that they're going to make us whole. That is a scary proposition. And so, I mean, I shared with our facility community advisory committee that, you can't if they cut us significantly, you can't make those kind of reductions in a school budget without impacting positions. Now, our goal is we don't want to impact people. And so there's always natural attrition that takes place in a school district. And so we might not be able to fill positions that become vacant in the future if we're having to balance a budget. And the scariest thing about it is I just cannot envision that they're going to get done with that real early. I think it's going to be up until the deadline. And then I think we're going to spend all summer trying to figure out what they've done to us. And I mean, we've had some tough legislative sessions. It takes about a month for the experts to understand what they've done to us. And so we typically come to you, in February and March, and we talk about, our compensation plan and our staffing plan and all of our plans. There is little way that we're going to be able to come to you, maybe in May and be able to present, or early June, because we don't think we'll know. Any other questions or information that you would like to see brought back?
Thank y'all for serving.
Yes. Thank y'all for being here.
Thank you.
And feel free, if you want to exit stage left. I promised y'all that you wouldn't have to stay through the boring part of the meeting. And that concludes.
Or y'all can stay.
Or you can stay. I'm not telling you got to go. Absolutely. That concludes communications and reports.
Good luck, man.
Hey, appreciate it.
That gets us down to consent agenda, correct?
Yes.
All right, information on these items has been sent to the Board of Trustees for review prior to the meeting. Any board member may pull any item from the consent agenda without a second for deliberation prior to consideration. Any item pulled will be considered with the action items on the agenda. Item A is board minutes. Item B is expenditures in excess of $25,000. And C is acceptance of donation. What's your pleasure?
I move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Motion been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Now, in the business items, item 10A is discussion and possible action regarding a BCISD Christmas card selection, a very important part. of our-
Absolutely. As you know, each year we have one of our schools have the opportunity to create the artwork for the front of the Burnett CISD Christmas card. And this year that campus was R.J. Ritchie Elementary. And so the board had a chance to vote before this meeting. And so I'm happy to announce that Isabel Ortiz, a fifth grader at R.J. Ritchie, was the first place winner. There's her artwork. All right. And then second place was Cambry Carmichael. This was her entry from R.J. Ritchie. She is a third grader. And then our third place winner was Haley Mowden, I think. Haley Mowden, fifth grade at R.J. Ritchie Elementary. So the administration recommends, yeah, well deserved. We will have our artists here at our December meeting to present them with their awards for designing the different entries. And then we'll actually have Christmas cards designed with Isabel's artwork on the front. Administration recommends the approval of the artwork as presented.
Motion.
Hmm?
I move for the approval of the BCISD Christmas card selection from R.J. Ritchie Elementary.
I'll second.
All right, thank you. Motion been made and seconded to approve the BCISD Christmas card collection selection as presented. Any comments or questions? None. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item B is discussion and possible action regarding approval of revisions to the board operating procedures. Mr. McDermott.
Beginning on page 59 of your board book, you'll find information regarding the board operating procedures. As you will recall, Robbie and Andy, we first created the operating procedures back in June 2012, and they provide guidance to our current and future board members on standard operating procedures agreed upon by the entire board. We worked with Terry Smith again at our facilitator as part of our team building session to review and revise our board operating procedures. There were 3 revisions that came out of our work session. The first on page 62 of your board packet just clarifies that regular meetings, we always provide the board book the Thursday prior to the scheduled meeting, but for a special meeting, that board book will be provided within 48 hours of the special meeting. The second item deals with complaints to individual board members, and we've added item 2. Complaints received by email will typically be responded by the superintendent on behalf of the board or board member. However, individual board members may respond to constituent emails with a polite acknowledgement and to let the individual know the issue has been referred to the superintendent. And then finally, on page 69, superintendent communication with board members. We've added an item to codify for into the future that the superintendent will provide board members with a weekly update communication, as is current practice. The administration recommends the approval of the revisions to the board operating procedures as presented.
I so move.
Second.
All right, thank you. Motion been made and seconded to approve of the revisions to the board operating procedures as presented. Any comments or questions on that? Kind of, only thing I can comment on, Robbie, it surprised me we survived so long without it.
I will say, we're pretty good here.
Worked pretty good for a while.
Yeah.
All righty.
Can we get
Those,
a clean copy of it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And one will also be posted on the board website, on our BCSD website. Yes. Yep.
okay, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Thank you. Item C is discussion and possible action regarding approval of a resolution providing for 1 additional day of paid leave on December 18th of 20.
So during that same team building session, the Board of Trustees had a discussion that they instigated on ways in which that they could honor and recognize and appreciate our staff, especially for the extra efforts and time that they're putting forth during the pandemic. And to that end, the board wishes to provide one additional day of paid leave on December 18th for all Burnett CISD eligible employees, and a public school purpose will be served by granting the one-day paid leave to all eligible employees by demonstrating support for employees, enhancing employee morale, and supporting the retention of employees. Once this item is approved, and then the next item will take care of actually formally adopting a new school calendar. So the administration recommends the approval of a resolution providing for one additional day of paid leave on December 18th for all Burnett CIC eligible employees, and the funds for that day are budgeted.
Make the motion for the approval of the resolution providing for one additional day of paid leave on December the 18th, 2020 for all Burnett CISD eligible employees.
Second.
All right, thank you. Motion been made and seconded to approve an additional day of paid leave on December 18th, 2020 for all Burnett CISD eligible employees. It was well received at Burton campus when Ross and I were there, and I suspect it was at all y'all's campuses too.
Well, and I would just say, as a reminder, especially anyone that's listening, I mean, this took place during the board's team building session. It wasn't on the agenda. And just how touching it is that the board would want to take the time that they did to discuss what can we do for the staff. That was their number one question. What can we do to express our appreciation? And so I just, I know the staff is very appreciative of you thinking of them during especially this very challenging year.
All right, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item D is discussion and possible action regarding approval of revisions to the BCISD 2020 and 2021 school year calendar. Dr. Jones.
I'm pretty loud, but I guess for the listeners, I'll use the microphone. All right. And so as in past months, we've reviewed our options with the calendar. And at the beginning of the school year, you adopted a calendar that had quite a bit of extra instructional minutes inside of it. And in the event that we needed additional flexibility due to COVID-19. And so those extra banked minutes allow for some flexibility. And so the calendar that is provided to you as a proposal has two changes from the currently adopted calendar. One is the December 18th staff and student holiday, in line with the resolution that you've just voted on. And the second change is the last day of school for students, which is currently adopted as May the 28th, an early release day, but we would propose that be changed to be a full day on May 27th so that staff have a full work day on May the 28th to close out the school year and finish things up for 2021.
I do have a question on, I know that the 18th was normally a early release day. Does that make the 17th an early release or a full day?
No, ma'am, we would continue a full day on the 17th.
I move approval of the proposed revisions to the BCISD 2021 school year calendar.
Second.
All right, thank you. Motion been made and seconded to approve revisions to the BCISD 2020-2021 school calendar as presented. Any questions or comments? If none, those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. All right, item E is discussion and possible action regarding approval of Burnett Middle School's targeted improvement plan. Dr. Jones.
All right, and I have Mr. Lejeune here this evening. And so thank you for staying through with us so that you can represent Burnett Middle School for this item. Under the 2019 State Accountability System, Burnett Middle School received the label of comprehensive support based upon their state accountability with performance and growth of students in academics. And so under legislation, the comprehensive support label takes 2 years to be removed, 2 years of satisfactory growth and performance to be removed. But in 2020, there were no STAR tests. And so BMS was reset to year 1 of comprehensive status this year. And so once again, the leadership team at Burnett Middle School has worked to write a targeted improvement plan, we call it TIP, that's aligned to TEA's Effective Schools Framework. A few changes from last year's TIP, or really just one major change from last year's TIP. After having a diagnostic visit to the campus where we had a couple of folks spend a full day, everything from breakfast to dismissal, talking to staff all in between, providing their observations and feedback and interviews with focus groups. We have a change in one of the 3 areas of focus. And so I've listed the 3 areas that are the main priority areas that the campus is focused on. And that's curriculum and assessments that are aligned to TEKS with a year-long scope and sequence, using objective-driven daily lesson plans with formative assessments, and then utilizing data-driven instruction. The campus leadership has been meeting repeatedly this fall to craft this plan and to revise their action steps for student achievement. The plan is enclosed in your packet. It's organized in cycles, kind of quarters. The first one is September to November, then December to February, and March to May. And in each of those cycles, TEA monitors conferences by telephone and asks questions and checks up on how we're doing according to the actions that have been written into the plan. And so the first step in that process is for the Board of Trustees to approve the plan in its current state. But just as a campus improvement plan, it will change over the course of the year as they actually work the plan, adjust the plan, and who knows what might change in the plan with COVID-19. So we just continue forward making, aligning to those 3 prioritized areas. But be happy to answer questions, or Mr. Lejeune could also answer questions.
Jeremy, how do you feel the staff is accepting the changes and the roles are having to change and jumping through all these hoops?
I think it was somewhat challenging last year, but we had a year of essentially practice getting ready for this. So we know that it is daunting at times, but I think they've done a lot more accepting this year. We start every faculty meeting off with talking about our 3 main goals and where we're at with those 3 goals. So it's a constant conversation. And then from there, within our PLCs and everything, we're always talking about data-driven instruction and where we're at. And it's enabled us to take a closer look at ourselves and where we are as a campus and look for those opportunities to grow. So I think that they have embraced it a lot more this year.
It's real early in data right now. Do you have any kind of feel for the data?
So we set goals at the beginning of the year with an end in mind of where we would like to be. Some of our early goals we have scored higher than what we had initially put as our goal. There are a couple of areas that we have some room for growth, but looking at the data, it enables us to see where our shortfalls are, to create plans for those shortfalls, and then to continue to go with where we're at, we're doing well, and enhance that. So yeah, we've had a lot of growth so far in just a short time.
Thank you.
And I just want to recognize, though, the extreme challenge. I mean, I'm still not sure exactly how this is all going to work in terms of accountability. And he's had a staff member that's left, the beginning of the year. And you have substitutes and then the permanent person. And then we have, as we've reported, days in which we don't have substitutes. And so just the continuity of instruction across the entire district has been disrupted. And yet the state just blindly keeps saying, we're going to give you that test when we say we're going to give it to you. And then we'll figure out after we've given it to you how we're going to apply it for accountability. And there are so many factors working against And again, I'm not wanting to take away from accountability. Our staff, we need to show up every day and do the very best job we can in teaching our kids. It's just, there are so many factors impacting instruction today that it is hard for me to say that you could have any benchmark of comparing this year to any other year that we've ever experienced, because there is no comparison. But I appreciate Jeremy and all of our principals for keeping that focus on, even during a pandemic, even with face coverings and social distancing and plexiglass, encouraging and supporting our teachers to keep doing the very best that they can to improve academic achievement.
Well, I make the motion for the approval of Burnett Middle School's targeted improvement plan as presented.
Second.
All right, thank you. Motion's been made and seconded to approve of Burnett Middle School's targeted improvement plan as presented. Any more comments or questions? If none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Gets us to item F, is discussion and possible action regarding the approval of a maximum class size waiver at RJ Ritchie Elementary School. Dr. Jones.
All right, these details begin on page 100 of your packet. Texas Ed Code, Chapter 25, contains the statute that classes in kindergarten through grade 4 need to have a size limit of 22 students per one teacher. And currently at RJ Ritchie, we have one class of 23 students. Not all those students are in-person students, few are remote, but due to the difficulty in obtaining and housing and supplying a new teacher right now, we recommend that we continue with a class size waiver for that 23rd student rather than create another section of third grade at RJ Ritchie. Any questions you might have for me?
No, I'm moving for the approval of the maximum class size waiver of RJ Ritchie Elementary.
Second.
All right, thank you. Motion been made and seconded to approve of the minimum class size waiver at RJ Ritchie Elementary as presented. Any comments, questions? If none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Item G, discussion and possible action regarding approval of the first quarter budget amendment for the 2020-2021 school year budget. Mr. Gehring.
Yes, sir. The budget amendment is found on page 101 and 102. Pretty basic budget amendment for this first quarter. The initial not fun part is the reduction of revenue by the $300,000 that we're projecting due to the decrease in enrollment. And so we have taken that and reduced revenue, that amount. However, we have not added any expenditures. There are some interfunction transfers that took place to help operate departments, campuses, but we have not increased the expenditure budget, and that follows what we had discussed with you guys when we talked about the decrease in enrollment, that we're not going to come in at lower expenditures or change programs, but we will definitely keep our eye on any areas that get increased. Where in the past, we'd be coming to you and say, we are increasing this function because we approved this $100,000 project A. This year, we will be a lot more strict in doing anything like that, knowing we're sitting at a $300,000 deficit. So we did make some small changes, but expenditures are not increasing. Revenue will decrease with this amendment, and we'll be sitting at a $300,000 deficit for this school year. But luckily, we have fund balance to help offset that when the year ends. Any questions?
I move approval of the first quarter budget amendment for the 2021 school year budget.
Second.
All right, thank you. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first quarter budget amendment for the 2020-2021 school year budget as presented. Any comments or questions on that? All these years, they wonder why we kept such a healthy fund balance. Sometimes it comes in handy.
Yes, sir.
Okay, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. personnel.
Just a report. So we have a math teacher that is going to be retiring in December, at the end of the month, or at the end of December, and also a Spanish teacher. So we have hired our math teacher. She has 15 years of experience coming back home to Burnett. So we are excited that Rachel is going to be joining us in January. We have a Spanish teacher that we have claimed. He graduates in December as well, so we can't present him to you until after he has actually graduated. But we have secured a Spanish teacher as well. So we're very excited about those two very hard to fill positions, finding those and getting those secured for January.
And apparently the Spanish teacher can also sing.
Yes.
He was featured on a program called Tango Talento, Mucho Talento. It's kind of like America's Got Talent, but for singers. It was a.
So
Sharon,
when will
we're going to
Miss-
go back to item 5. Do we have anything to go back for? Huh?
Did you have a question, Angela?
Well,
I'm sorry.
Jane, will she retire at the end of this school year?
That is her plans. Yes.
And what about Kimberly Ship?
She has already resigned and left.
So this is our new, this our an order declaring the results. So what you'll just need to do is read, yeah, or you can read how much they got from each county if you want to, or just read the totals. It's fine.
Okay,
And
these
I
are the
have a
totals.
tally sheet.
Okay, these are the totals.
Yeah, those are the results. So I just made another tally sheet.
As Sharon's passing around, I'm sure it's the same one I've got that shows the Burnett County, Llano County, and Williamson County. But for,
Yours is a little bit different. Yours just has the totals.
okay, so it should still
Just
read
read the totals, yeah.
Total. All right, in order to canvass the votes, I'm going to read the, what the candidates had. Suzanne Brown, a total of 10,011 total votes.
I don't even know that many people.
I didn't either. It's amazing. And place 7, Mark Kincaid had 7,585 votes to Tricia Carr, 2,716. And we need, no, we don't need a
Declare
motion for that. do we?
Declare the.
Oh, well, and I'll read this. Therefore found declared and so ordered by the Board of Trustees for BCISD that the above trustee election was duly called, that said notice of election was duly given, and said election was held in accordance with the law, that at said election Suzanne Brown and Mark Kincaid were elected to the Board of Trustees of said school district. I think that's all I need to read, right?
And then there's a sample
And I
motion.
apologize. So let's see. We can't do anything else, right?
No, there's a sample motion at the top of this handout I left at your place. It says canvas of election sample motion.
Oh, okay.
Maybe a non-candidate.
Yeah.
There's something in her place.
Here, here.
Okay, that's messed me up.
I didn't get one. Or either. Thank you, man.
That's the right thing.
So just do the top, right?
I move to approve the canvas and order declaring the results of November 3rd, 2020 trustee election.
Second.
Yeah, thank you. Motion been made and second to approve the, agree with the number of votes that were received by the candidates, Suzanne Brown and Mark Kincaid at our recent board election. Comments? Congratulations. And those in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carried. Okay. You're going to swear them in, yeah.
And we're going to delay board officer elections until December when Mr. Foster can be back here.
You have to stand.
From my angle, you look like an elf. All I see is a green shirt, striped socks. Oh, I did.
Flashing play, I wasn't flashing you.
Hey.
Come on, this is official.
Look at them socks.
Nice. Swear, will you?
I
I, Mark Kincaid,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the duties of the office of
the duties of the office of Burnett CISD School Board Trustee
the state of Texas
of the state of Texas
and will to the best of my ability
and will to the best of my ability
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution and laws
the Constitution and laws
of the United States and of this state, so help me God.
of the United States and of this state, so help me God.
Congratulations. And you just need to sign that.
All right,
And
sign.
I know, but this is your oath.
Oh.
This is
Sign the
official.
oath. Okay.
And then I'll notarize it.
You're only gonna do where one's gonna be old.
I took a picture of you, Mark. You want to take a picture of you? Yeah, and I'm gonna get one over there. You don't have to. Well, you know what? That's a good idea.
There we go. Look at you,
All right. Then.
being all thoughtful and everything.
So just raise your right hand, please, ma'am. I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of Burnett Consolidated ISD School Board Trustee. The duties of the office of Burnett Consolidated School Board Trustee of the state of Texas and will to the best of my ability preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and of this state, so help me God. Of the United States and of this state, so help me God. Right here.
I knew you would.
And I just need y'all to sign my notary book.
I wasn't even looking at them. I was looking at you.